I try and be coherent, but I'm not in a sober state, so we'll see how this goes.
From our feature out, Race Car Blues.
So,
You from Slowly Slowly, there will be
what's
touring
up?
as well in April and May if you want to see them.
Cyberpunk 2077 coming out this year. That's going to be pretty awesome. For those of you that don't know, cyberpunk is an entire genre of science fiction as well as a subculture in itself. So cyberpunk is all about like high-tech, low-life, basically the implications of technology on society. It tends to be very gritty, near-future depictions of humanity. Huge corporations, militaries and governments taking control of the world. AI going rogue and, cyborg armies, those sorts of things. Matrix is probably the most mainstream work of cyberpunk fiction that there is. But cyberpunk actually started with William Gibson in the 80s, who wrote the book Neuromancer, and he's the one who actually coined the term cyberspace. He essentially predicted the entire way the internet would be visualized and experienced. And so the idea of a matrix or a virtual space that you can actually go into and experience is something that William Gibson came up with. And so that existed in fiction long before it became actually, well, not even long before, basically engineered the future. Some might question that by talking about it, by bringing these concepts into the human psychology, that he actually made those things come to be. So cyberpunk tends to be focused on usually the very near close future, like just and thinking about how society has changed. That's had on cultures and technologies, and we're living in an increasingly cyberpunk world. So fans of cyberpunk are very aware of that. We notice these things in the world. Coronavirus being a big thing at the moment is the way that China is handling that. The government hurting people and responding to an epidemic like that. There's a lot that you can observe on that and see similarities with cyberpunk universes that have been thought about in fiction. So anything that's like dystopian as well, like 1984. It was at George Orwell's 1984 is very dystopian fiction. About the future. See, that was supposed. That 1984 was supposed, and of course that's now long in the past. So the Cyberpunk 2077 game was actually originally Cyberpunk 2020, but now it is the year 2020. So they've extended it further into the future to give us the impression that it's more in the future. But the point of cyberpunk is to connect science fiction with current world relevance, with what's happening in the real world today. So usually in science fiction they will try and predict current world trends in fields such as cybernetics and artificial intelligence and governments and militaries and things, and they'll try and imagine how things are going to play out in the future. And that's near future, because the further you go into the future, the harder it is to actually predict or have any sort of like accurate idea of what's going on. So cyberpunk, as we go further into the future, cyberpunk is becoming increasingly relevant, because that future that was imagined by writers such as William Gibson is actually happening. And it's very, very interesting and exciting, but also very, very scary to see the sort of like surveillance and the way that government is becoming increasingly powerful and exercising its power over citizens, the way that's done with force, how the police have become militarized and separate themselves from the common person. We're kind of becoming a very dystopian society, and yeah, I see a lot of those actual global issues are very prevalent here in Launceston, and that's something that I've had a lot of difficulty with the way that the police operate here and the way the mental health and the hospital systems are run, and the political systems are all very outdated, I think, and very in need of renewal. And I think that kind of change is only going to happen with real world exposure. I think that people are only really motivated to change things about themselves, their entire world, basically, or when everybody can see. When they have to admit it to themselves, that's when they finally will change. But people will trick themselves and fool themselves and convince themselves of things, and they will really fight others to defend their own delusions and preconceptions. So yeah, I'm sort of rambling on again. Like I said, I'm not exactly sober at the moment, so we're going to try and make this woo, having fun. So what's going on is that our reality has now become a cyberpunk dystopia, and that's pretty awesome. But also, that's pretty fucked up. Are humans even in control of their own society? Honestly, I don't think so. I think that a few individuals are able to affect a certain amount of power over society, but any individual or group that is entirely in control of society. But at the same time, we all seem to have common goals, even with all life on Earth and perhaps the universe. There is inherent goal or direction of evolution that leads towards more understanding, more coherence, more of the truth, better outcomes for actions, and a continual improvement. That's like an inherent like direction of things. Even though the universe is supposed to be in a constant state of entropy, evolution seems to be counterintuitive to that. Seems to be like the opposite of entropy, as it over time becomes more organized and more complex. So yeah, that's what this is all about. You know, it's like the big scheme of things, the grand scheme, the game, the meaning of life, the center of the universe. What is it, you know? That's what you are. You are that thing figuring itself out. You are the right now learning that you are the universe, and that's, I mean, like, it depends how you think about the universe. I mean, you could use other words. You could say that you are God. You are God realizing that you are God, or you are simply awareness realizing you are awareness. It depends how you want to abstract it yourself and how you want to get around that, because there are so many layers and different interpretations of the whole thing. Literally infinite, and that's what this is. This is an expression of infinity. So there is no limit to the amount of ways that it can be expressed or described, and that's a very beautiful thing. It's pretty cool. But it has some real world implications, and the main one is that we experience things. We actually feel what is happening. So that is the main consequence of consciousness. That is the price we pay for part in the universe, for taking part in it. The price that we've put on ourselves is that we would actually experience it, whether it's good or bad. Yeah, so all it takes is electricity moving through a neurological circuit in your brain, and then that creates a sensation or a thought or a feeling, and all of the and so many of those happening all at once come together in a certain pattern, create what you might think of as your soul or your personality, and that's what you want to get out there into the world and express and work on, and that's what you engage with throughout your entire life. That's what you are most familiar with. That's who you are deep down inside. So you notice the screen keeps flickering, like there's an effect of the autofocus and the automatic white balance and things of but the basic artificial intelligence in the camera app is constantly adapting to what's happening on the screen, and so it can be fun to play around with and mess with that. And when I first discovered that, it was really mind-blowing to me, and I made a lot of really trippy videos experimenting with it, and I think people didn't understand what I was doing. I was just experimenting with the way that I could manipulate the cameras and how that affects perception, because making it flash is one thing, but making that actually look cool is another thing, so yeah, I'm not afraid of weird stuff or looking weird. Yeah, that's all. Like, I mean, you have to embrace it. You can't, if you're normality is a delusion. It's just a